It was a few days ago.
No. Pretty sure I did.
No.
Excellent.
Morning, councillors and staff, and welcome to members of the gallery. First time we've had some people attending in person since COVID restrictions were lifted a while ago, so it's great to see some people here. Thank you for coming. We will start this morning with the acknowledgement of Councillor Stewart. Thank you.
We would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land on which we meet, the Kabi Kabi. We would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and the ongoing connection to land, sea and community. We pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. We also extend that respect to all other people present. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now hand over to Pastor Kevin Dunn from the Church of Christ to say a few words of wisdom and then lead us in prayer and a minute's silence to remember the deceased residents of the region.
I'm here on behalf of the Ministers Network, and we are a group of 16 churches that have come together as an incorporated body. And it's a privilege and an honor to be journeying with you guys for this next year. And we're excited about what God's doing in our region, the city. I'm looking forward to partnering with you guys. One thing we want to pass on is that there's ways that we can help accomplish goals for the city. We care about the prosperity of the city just as much as you do. We have I won't say a workforce, but we have a volunteer force of about 2,000 or 3,000 people that we can get ready to do stuff. So our hope this year as churches is to work together even better and work together with you. So let us know how we can help and what we can do to get the city continuing to move forwards. I'm going to pray and just bless this time. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. Lord, I love that we have 16 churches that come together from all sorts of walks of life. And Lord, we just know that this ultimately is your land and this is your city, Lord, and we pray that you can bless it. These conversations take place, Lord, not just in this room, but even outside this room, throughout the city, Lord. We pray that we can treat each other with respect and kindness as you have done to us. I pray, Lord, that you'll give us wisdom in knowing how to solve the issues that we have in our city, that you'll give us wisdom for future issues that might take place that we can be working towards. And we thank you, Lord, for the opportunity, the privilege it is for everyone here to have a part in the city and everyone who's watching to have a part in making the city a better city. So we thank you that ultimately thank you for your son, Jesus, that we can have eternal life through him. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
For the Lord to rise in 1 minute in silence. And before we do that, though, there is the community prayer breakfast coming up end of February. So that's an opportunity for council community and the church community to work together. So timely words, Pastor. Thank you. We do. I don't know if we have the.
There's 15 people outside.
We do any disclosures of interest, Councillor? Councillor Stewart?
5.1.
5.1. Any others, Councillors? Right, we do have a leave of absence for Councillor Waldock and one for Councillor Polly. So, do we have the details of? Well, Councillor Waldock is for this meeting. So, someone to move that Councillor Waldock be given a leave of absence. Councillor Smurden, Councillor Jensen second. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And for councillor Polly, your
Oh, it was in my email. April and June, but only the workshop meetings, not the actual general meetings. So.
so councillor Jensen to move, councillor Smyrna to second, councillor Polly being given the leave of absence from those workshops. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Yeah, if we can just email that through the events, if you can. We, confirmation of minutes. We have recommendation there before us. Councillor Smyrna to move. Someone to second. Councillor Stewart to second. That the minutes from the December meeting are taken as true and correct, read and confirmed. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We have no petitions before us today. We'll move on to item 5.1. What's the CDA? Hand over to you, Mr. Lewis. Hand over to Councillor Stewart.
The governance officer informed me I do not have a conflict of interest in this matter, in that council is merely noting a disciplinary decision made elsewhere and outlining how it will council will fulfil its responsibilities. And that's fair enough reasoning. However, our conflict of interest guide states a declarable conflict of interest includes interests where a reasonable person might think you could not be impartial, and thus I state that I in fact have a declarable conflict of interest due to being the subject of the disciplinary matter, and as a result of this declarable interest I will remain to state my admission as I'm required and possibly answer questions, and then I'll leave for any debate and vote.
Any questions, councillors? Thank you, Councillor Stewart. We'll move on to item 5.1. Well, the councillor said it's leave, so we'll someone to start if they want to start. Item 5.1. Who's leading through that? Mr. Senior?
Basically, the Council of Conduct Tribunal, the CCT, has advised that on the 12th of December, it has determined on the balance of probabilities that the allegation that on or about the 7th of January, Councillor Stewart engaged in misconduct pursuant to section 171(3) of the Local Government Act. The information is provided in the report for councillors to disseminate. Basically, the issue relates to a Facebook post that Councillor Stewart made in relation to the appointment of the former CEO. And the council has a number of options that it can impose on the councillor in relation to the misconduct that has been found. So the recommendation is that the council notes on the balance that the CCT's findings, and then it orders that the councillor make a public admission at the next council meeting, which is today. We order that the councillor attend training to address the conduct, and that the councillor reimburse local government 25% of the costs of the local government's management of the issue. And then subsequently to council's findings, the council advise the office of the independent assessor of council's deliberations in the matter, and that council's conduct register be updated accordingly.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Frederick?
I might be reading this incorrectly, but the state government is directing us to note the outcome and to take the actions 1 to 3. Given that it appears to me we've got no option, we would be subject to disciplinary action ourselves if we vote against this. Is that correct? I'm coming from a position where I've been advised if I don't attend this meeting, or may be subject to disciplinary action. Now I'm asking, if I attend this meeting and I vote no, given that it's a directive by the state government, would we as councillors be subject to disciplinary action or a breach of something if we dared to vote against this?
I think that's a very relevant question, Councillor Fredman. I mean, there appears to be an element of duress in the recommendation here today, or a certain element of a lack of understanding. It may be, without the appropriate legal advice, we couldn't give you any information on that. So this matter may need to lay on the table until we can satisfy your concerns in that area, Councillor Fredman. Is that something you're looking to facilitate?
I move a motion that we postpone this, subject to receiving further information. Specifically, whether we have a right to vote on this very matter, given that it appears to be directive from the state government. And I'm not comfortable being here in the first place, but I am, and then not comfortable being able to vote on this when it may lead to disciplinary action if I vote no.
So you're moving that the matter lay on the table until further clarification around council's
About whether we,
rights in voting either for or against
yes,
are resolved through some legal advice.
correct.
Through Mr Mayor, the whole premise of the OIA and the CCT is that council vote on the performance and the discipline of the peers. So the premise is that the expectation is that council will undertake the vote on this issue.
I think the council's concern is that if they do vote against the orders, if they don't agree with them, is there a disciplinary outcome from the OIA in relation to that?
Correct.
So we just need to get some clarification on that before we proceed. Councillor Deborah?
Just with what you're, through the mayor, just with what CEO Lewis just said, the expectation is that we will vote. The expectation is that we will vote in favour, like to rubber stamp it,
No,
or that we will.
The expectation is you will consider the facts and vote.
Okay, then I'd like to, yes.
Are we, I guess the other question is, if we do vote against the recommendations of the council contract program, are we bringing it into disrepute? And will that be, will there be recourse in relation to the OIA?
The expectation would be that if you voted against the recommendation, that you would state the reasons why you're voting against the recommendation.
Which could lead to disciplinary action. We probably do need to get some clarification. So we have a recommendation there, councillors.
Oh, it doesn't need to be.
No. That the matter lay on the table.
Am I allowed to ask clarifying questions about it? But if it gets laid on the table, then that's the end of it, or can I ask my clarifying questions about it anyhow?
Look, the motion is there. If you do have some questions about it, I think that would be best to forward them through the CEO so they can get clarification.
Okay, that's fine.
Councillor Miller?
I do have a question. If we do lay this on the table, this has a timeline identified. It's by the tribunal. That will still obviously be in place, and it's still those actions are still going to be undertaken.
The timeline in relation to the 120 days RSE in order C would relate to from the point of this order. So I'm assuming that would mean from when it's accepted by council or ratified by council, if it is. Unless it,
no,
I don't know. We just need to we need to get some understanding on this.
No. Yeah, there is a specific date. So my question is, regardless of our decision today, that these orders are still going to be in place and they're still going to be undertaken anyway. So we're just clarifying our
which then you ask.
Position.
If that's the case, why bring it to us, I suppose. So there is a recommendation on the table of councillors. Councillor Fredman's moved that. Is there any further questions in relation to that recommendation that it lay on the table to get clarification? Sorry, Sarah. We can speak to you after the meeting.
Yeah, sweet.
Yep, too easy. No worries.
But I'd like facts to back all the information up too, though.
So we have a recommendation there before us, councillors. Councillor Fredman has moved. All those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you.
Okay, get him in.
Councillor Stewart, come back in, thanks.
Sorry.
I'll just hand over to, I'll wait for Councillor Stewart to come back and then hand over to Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, and that too.
Councillor Jensen has the floor.
As a result of a complaint made to the Office of the Independent Assessor, I have been directed by Council to make a public apology. I regret that I said office furniture when I should have said office accommodation. It was never my intention to mislead the public.
Thank you, Councillor Jensen. We'll move on to item 5.2, the Regional Council.
I still need to make my admission regardless of what.
Sorry,
I still need to make my admission.
isn't that what you've done?
No.
Righto, you've got more to add, have you?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I said a conflict of interest before.
Yep. So you want, even though we haven't resolved that, you want to do that?
It's irrelevant. The Council Conduct Tribunal has made its decision.
Yeah.
What we decide is irrelevant.
You want to do?
So,
You want to do it today?
well, I've got no choice.
Okay. Great. I'll hand over to Councillor Stewart.
I admit in early 2022, in reply to a resident's comment on a Facebook post in my public Facebook page, I disclosed a piece of confidential information. This contravened section 1713 of the Local Government Act and was an act of misconduct.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. We'll move on now to item 5.2, affiliate membership of ComSec. Is this your Lewis?
Mr. Mayor. This report seeks council endorsement that we or approve affiliate membership of ComSec, which is South East Queensland Council of Mayors. The reason for the seeking affiliate membership is that council has increasing ties to South East Queensland in relation to some key services such as waste and tourism. Whilst we won't be a voting member of the association, we can start to leverage and build off some of their programs and initiatives. In the past, we've been a member of WebRock, which has served our needs up to a point, but we see our opportunities for collaboration and growth being more to the south rather than the north and the west of the region.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Smith?
Will we ever be more of an official part of that organisation or not?
At this point, the boundaries around regional plans and that sort of stuff finish at Noosa and Sunny Coast. So us having a stronger seat at that table would mean that we would need to be involved in discussions around the regional plan that actually doesn't affect us. So there was a desire from that group for us to join. They see the similarities between Gympie and where it goes and the southeast corner. There's also considerations around, waste, recycling and other things that we can work together collectively on rather than sort of separately. So at this point in time, the answer is a no, while the state planning boundaries are the way they are. But I mean, this is a step in building those relationships, and if the boundaries were to change, well, that's a state decision. But we'll still stay part of WebRock. We do have some similarities there between some of the other councils and the regions, but sadly not a lot. But there are some areas where we can collectively work together to try and move things forward in different areas.
Through Mr. Mayor, the other key component that I failed to mention was the linkages around tourism, especially ecotourism, which we're starting to work on already with destinations such on coast. And also we're trying to leverage all any benefits we may be able to derive from the 2032 Olympics, which will hopefully build and reinforce our sport facilities.
So we stay a part of of Webb Rock.
Yeah.
And we're an associate with SCP. That's good.
Yeah.
It covers all of our boundaries, eh?
Councillor Deborah?
Through the mayor, when did we workshop this idea? Because I can't recall.
We've spoken about it a couple of times
When we first,
over the last 12 months.
all right. And is the plan to eventually leave Webb Rock and join this? Is that ultimately where it's heading?
It's not possible to join this group wholeheartedly because of the boundaries, particularly around regional plans and that. If we were to join them, then we may not have a say in White Bay. I mean, there's state boundaries around planning and other government departments that sort of inhibit us going completely there. We've just sort of got to have a foot in each camp at the time being.
I do think there'd be a bit of kickback from residents if we gave away the Webb Rock sort of thing, because we are White Bay.
Yeah, look, there's no intention to step aside from Webb Rock. We're currently reassessing the role of Webb Rock. It probably got a little bit too big and went down sort of paths that it shouldn't have gone down, and that created expense for the members. So I think the model that we're looking at the moment is very much streamlined and more focused on the commonalities between the local governments. How can we represent the whole of the White Bay on specific topics that benefit us all, rather than sort of individual things that may have a benefit for areas north of here, but they don't have much for us.
Thank you.
Councillor Polly?
Question to you, Mr Mayor. Just trying to clarify a statement. I thought I heard you say they invited us to be part of this, as opposed to us knocking on their door.
After the conversations we've had, we approached Concept and to see what their interest in it was. I've had discussions with the Lord Mayor of Brisbane and the Mayor of the Sunny Coast and also Noosa, particularly around the waste and recycling, to see whether there's some synergies there, and through this process we can actually be part of a bigger discussion and a bigger picture.
Yeah. So one final question, if you could ask the CEO some commentary around the membership fee, because I mean, 20 grand could be the cheapest application we've ever had, or it could be a complete waste of money. So I'd just like some commentary around the justification for that, if that's possible.
I guess through Mr Mayor, the justification will come out of some of the benefits that we hopefully derive through it. And if that for 20,000, even if that all of that is we start to establish the dialogue, start to build the linkages and communication streams between the organisations, I would see that as a great benefit and for $20,000 money well spent.
Okay. What's the methodology behind how they calculated that? Because they gave us some kind of
population. I couldn't be sure.
It's in the report.
It's based on population and it's discounted by 50%.
Yeah, simply because we don't have the same access to all the services and opportunities that a full member would have.
Are we then one of the only affiliate members, or is there other people bordering the SEQ that are affiliate members as well?
No, we're the only affiliate member. They after the discussions with them, they actually created this opportunity. So there was no affiliate membership, there was no consideration of that. It just gives us a seat at a bigger table.
Yep.
Councillor Mill?
I've just got a question for the CEO and yourself, Mr Mayor. Are there any concerns with the terms of reference that you can see? Because you'd know the situation.
I didn't have any, no. Well, I think there's a lot of goodwill from their end. I know there's a lot of goodwill from our end. There's things that all local governments do, and instead of being so tribal and this is our patch and we don't work collectively together, part of this discussion is around how can we work together to benefit everyone, particularly in that waste space. I know there's a lot that can be done there, and as recycling grows over the coming decades, I mean, we could put ourselves in a position to be a hub for that, rather than sort of trying to do it on our own.
Through Mr Mayor, to the way the terms are written, it's quite easy for either party to exit the arrangement. That's one thing that I can see.
Yeah.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Councillor Smerdon to move, Councillor Fredman to second, Councillor Smerdon to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think this is a good step for Impey. We've got look to the future, and I think a lot of our future is towards the Sunshine Coast and that sort of work, so at least for now we've got to put in the door and onward and upward.
Councillor Fred.
From where I sit, our main community of interest is to the south. And it's not just in rubbish and recycling. Our road network to the south is what most Gympie residents use, not the road network to the north. So I see a benefit in terms of roads, because we've got a number of roads that are leading into the southern and the eastern side of Sunshine Coast. Water's another area where we can benefit. Believe it or not, most of the water we use comes from the Sunshine Coast. The dam is a top-up. Most of the water's run, the river flows from the Sunshine Coast, and the Sunshine Coast takes water out of the Mary River in this council area as well. So I just see plus for us in looking south, and the sooner we start, the better. Years ago, we were part of the Sunshine Coast Road Group, and I found that to be very successful because of, again, the community of interest to most of our ratepayers is to the south.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart.
I just want to re-echo Councillor Fredman's points. There are people in my division who kids go to school in Coran or Cooroy, they shop in Cooroy or Noosa, they work Noosa, Sunny Coast. They wouldn't even know where Mary Street is. And then there's lots of other people in my division who, family in Brisbane, or if they go out of our region, it is heading south, not north. And we don't identify with the so-called Mary Burnett. That's just an artificial bureaucratic nicety. We identify more with South East Queensland, so I think this is a good move.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Mill.
Well, I also fully support us being part of this organisation. We're talking about a 20,000 approximate investment to do so, but then the value out of that I can see coming back in multiples. That networking value of just knowing what's going on, actually having that feedback through for future strategies and opportunity, is well worth the $20,000 per annum or around about. So I fully support this.
Any other speakers, Councillor? Councillor Smoot to close. With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.1, Financial Report, December 22. Hand over to Ms Hatherall. Mr Evans.
Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. The finance report is our monthly report which we present under the statutory obligation. The report is trending as we would expect it in alignment with our forecasts. I'll take the report as being read and answer any questions.
Any questions, councillors?
There's one in there about capital spend and actually improving the way we report that through a capital spend facility, for obviously it's finance. Is there any way of having an understanding of, I know we've got spend, we've also got project completion or project outcomes as well. Is there any way of actually putting that in the same report or not?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I've actually had a couple of really good conversations with our new Director of Infrastructure. We're looking at putting together a more comprehensive reporting framework around capital spend. As you can imagine, the financial reports is very one-dimensional, it's numbers. There's a lot more to be gained in terms of trying to manage the actual peaks and troughs of project cash flow, and also provide some commentary around the status of these projects and physical completion and financial completion, because they're two separate things. So that's on our cards.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we're also looking at bringing to every second council workshop a detailed analysis of where we're up to in terms of capital delivery, in terms of both financial and physical delivery, and we'll be providing commentary on those projects that we're classing as having a red flag.
Any other questions, councillors? Mr Evans had always a detailed report. We've got a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second. Councillor Milne, Councillor Stewart to speak.
It's pleasing to see that we're probably doing a bit better than budget. Probably the most disappointing part, and I think Councillor Milne alluded to it, is that our capital spend is behind where it should be. And but I think we'll probably talk a bit further about that other sections of the meeting. So thank you for the report, and I'm happy to move.
Councillor Milne.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Stewart. We are tracking well here, but I am disappointed about the capital spend, but that does have other influences. That's with our flood reconstruction works and things like that. And it is frustrating when you can have capital projects in a budget, and the budget's very fluid. You can adopt it one time and then it changes again. But yeah, we are tracking quite well. I am still a little bit hesitant on, yes, we do have cash funds, however, we do have a lot of unknowns. So while I'm happy where we're sitting at the moment, we'll see where we go in the next budget review.
Thank you. Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Now, there is a late agenda item for the ordinary meeting that I've missed. Item 5.1, the quarterly questions taken on notice. Sorry about that. I'll hand over to the CEO.
Could we defer that to?
Yep, okay, we'll do that towards the end. We'll defer that towards the end.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I noticed it's 5.1. We've had
Yeah.
5.1.
We might have to have it at 5.0 or something else. Yeah. Next item is item 6.2. Hand over to Mr Evans.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll take the paper as read. It relates to the work that is undertaken by Cormick Road in doing the assessment of the flood damage and assisting council in the very complex and detailed submissions to QRA to enable us to get funding. We went to the market at the end of the January last year to get ahead of the game, to basically have contractors in to assist us with this work. At the time at the market, we got hit by the February flood event, so we amended that to double the amount of work. Obviously then we had a May event, so effectively this contract extension variation is because of the actual size of the claim is significantly more than what was envisaged when we went to the market. So take questions on.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Paul.
So as I understand it, we've employed them to help with our submission to the government to get the funding, and it seems like, if I read it right, we're then going to employ them to project manage the...
We are looking at the requirements because of the volume of work. It exceeds our capacity at the moment, so we are looking at the need for project management. Initially, we had identified probably Cormick Road may have been the best placed, but we've now decided to take that through a procurement process.
Okay.
But we will need assistance to project manage the work.
Yeah.
Today's recommendation relates to the extra work that they've done in relation to the contract that we awarded.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah, just somewhere around it, just sounded like we're getting them to help with our tender, and then they could apply and do the work that they tendered, helped us for. It just sounded a bit circular, but yeah, that's fine. And sorry, my other final question was, the funding that we're paying them, it's part of the funding that we're going to receive from the government anyhow, so technically it's not actually costing us.
Correct.
Their fee will be in the...
Yeah, so fundamentally, the advantage of actually using external, it is cleaner as part of the claim. So effectively, you know, their invoice goes as part of our claim.
Yeah.
And it's well within the realm of percentages that are applied by QRA in terms of the lodging of the claim, but also subsequently when we do start to do the work, well, we're already undertaking work.
Yep.
But when you have external project managers, it is easier for the claim because then you don't have to allocate time. So.
Councillor Stewart.
I guess I get a fair few constituents who are frustrated about how long it's taking to get the flood repairs done, and I explain to them reasons why. But I guess, is there any indication that it's taking us longer or faster to get government approval for, grant approval for doing the flood repair works, or
I would say, compared to previous events, the amount of detail and rigorous review undertaken by QRA is significantly greater.
okay,
The length of time between when we lodge and when we have approval, it has lengthened beyond probable expectations, but like a lot in the industry, QRA have been resource constrained trying to get people in to help, considering the extent of the flood damage that is incurred in Queensland. So our first claim took 90 days, our second claim took 110 days from the date we lodged till we got approval.
and is that comparable to, I mean, how are we tracking compared to, say, other councils? Do you know, do you have any, at least informal conversation with other councils about how that's going?
It's across the board.
Across the board.
So do know the impacts in the far west, where you have, because of the size of the councils, QRA is also providing them some assistance to get the claims together, has had an impact on their resourcing. But QRA are significantly increasing their resourcing. So the feedback we've had from them is that length of time will decline, but we haven't seen it yet. The biggest challenge is the amount of detail that each claim requires as evidence of damage is significant. So the one claim is like 1,000 lines, which includes data, photos, and so on. So if there's like a kilometre of line of road damaged, basically every 100 metres of that will have to have photo evidence of before and after.
I guess in one sense I'm sort of wanting to make sure that the slowness isn't due to our contractor, it's due to other circumstances. And then the other side is, then should we be talking to the state government about how long it's taking? If it's
we have had a number of conversations with QRA.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, I think we're doing 5 submissions at the moment, and those 5 submissions had 7,000 lines of data, and then under each line of data there's another 20 sublines, so 140,000 bits of information plus photographs have to go in to substantiate the works that we're undertaking in this junction. And that's just for our first 5 claims. There's 22 claims in total.
So it's whether, I guess my question then is, it's a bit longer term, is this government agency asking for too much information, therefore taking too long, and should we be talking about those sort of processes? That's really beyond what
probably argue no, because they want to make sure that we don't get it all and more than what
yeah, I get that.
Yes, because it takes us a lot longer.
And there have been historical audit reports that have highlighted misspends in certain areas. Not here, but like that, but
at what stage does the compliance cost more than what you're saving in make sure you're doing things right? And that's it's a hard question. It's not really to do with this direct, so.
Yeah, and can I say, if the cost of compliance is greater, then the state and the feds wear it, because fundamentally we're allocating all our costs appropriate to doing those claims to them.
It's also our constituents who were keep having to drive over potholed roads and whatever, and it takes so long.
Any other questions, Councillor Smith?
Section 2, we're not going to go to tender for that,
We're looking at what are the opportunities to ensure value for money. So whether we go to tender or there are a number of within the, because of the nature of the work being related to emergency, and there are a number of ways we can do it to expedite the process. So a full-blown tender process can take 4 months, and just conscious of whilst we're doing that, work potentially won't be done. So we're looking at how do we comply with legislative requirements, how do we ensure value for money. Again, the value for money isn't an impost on Gympie because the cost is fully recoverable, but to meet the obligations of the state and the feds, we have to ensure value for money. So we're looking at what is the most expeditious way we can to engage and ensure we can demonstrate value for money.
So how many tenders did we have originally for this?
I think there was about 5.
Okay.
Again, this work is slightly different to the work going forward. So we went out to tender for organisations to assist us in lodging the claim. The second piece is understanding those claims, and you still have to report against them, but it's also the project manager.
So we can't expedite the process and we just go back to those 5 tenders and...
That's what we're looking at as well.
We, through Mr. Mayor, will bring this to council workshop later on this afternoon to discuss our options and the implications of any changes in direction that council may wish to go down.
Thanks, Mr. Evans.
Any other questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there before us. Someone to move. Councillor Fredman, someone to second. Councillor Smooth, Councillor Fredman to speak.
Look, we're getting something free here. We deserve it because we really copped it in the floods. But when you get something for free, it's not unusual to have to jump through the hoops like this. I just think onwards as fast as we can is what we need to be on about. We do have to comply with the law in terms of purchasing, but at the same time we've got to be grateful because going back a few decades we wouldn't have got any money. Now we've got a system of getting money. Let's respect the rules and let's get into it and take full advantage of it. And hopefully the public, well, they may never understand, of course, because of the intricacies of government, but realistically the speed at which we're tackling this whole flood damage problem and normal maintenance as well has been put upon us by the flood events, and we've just got to work our way through it. And I've got no excuses other than it takes time, and we're not the only local government looking for money, and then after that looking for contractors. So it's hard going, I know. I respect the concerns of people. This is another step forward, and we've just got to keep on doing what we can as fast as we can.
Councillor Smith.
Couldn't agree more, Councillor Fredman, but getting the work done is priority 1, but we also need to get value for money as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, I'm happy to second this motion.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Fredman to close.
I think we've said enough.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.3, the GRID project update. Hand over to Mr. Evans and Ms. Catherall again. Or maybe not.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take this report as read. It's just an update in terms of the GRID project. One of the things, when we initiated the project, it was at a time of a number of organisations doing major IT upgrades, and we were unable to resource in-house to do the project, so we engaged an organisation called GWI to assist us with program management, change management, and other items. A number of these other organisations' projects have ended. We've been able to engage internally, so probably the major thing for this update is that we've ceased using GWI and gone in-house. I'm pleased to say that the first go live, which is finance and supply chain management, is anticipated to go live beginning of May this year.
Any questions, councillors? This is quite a big investment and project for us over the coming years, well, not just this year. Great to have an update. Any questions? Nothing? Have a recommendation there before us. Someone to move. Councillor Milne, Councillor Devereux to second, Councillor Milne to speak.
I've said this before, I think this is one of the most exciting projects that we're having because it's actually going to make our organisation more functional. It's a massive investment of the organisation. I was happy to note that the forecasts are going to be coming in under budget, so that's very good. And look, I'm happy to receive and note this progress report. I'm just happy to have it all implemented at the end of the day. But yeah, no, it's a good report. So thanks to the officers for prepared it.
Councillor Devereux.
The improvements and the money we're spending on ICT, the information technology, all that, it's a huge investment, yes. It's also probably, I think, the most exciting thing that we've got on the plate at the moment, which isn't reactive to the floods. So I am very excited. I think it's going to have some huge improvements that I can see as they come through the pipe for the organisation, for ratepayers, and just efficiencies and all the rest. So I am excited about it. More than happy to second this. Thank you.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Milne to close.
No, I have to move to the vote.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.4, the quarterly investment report to December 2022. Over to Mr. Evans and Ms. Hatherall again.
Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors again. This is our quarterly investment report, which we provide as part of our investment policy, which was adopted as part of the original budget. I'll take the report as read, noting that our income streams from revenue is substantially more than where we forecast to be, and that's because we've got additional cash funds invested and the investment rates are increasing at the moment. If there's any questions.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Polly.
So, you had table 3. I know what QTC is, I know what the ABA cash rate is. Who's Osborne Index? And do we have money with them, or is that just a comparison?
It's a comparison.
Right, that's all that was, okay.
Any other questions, councillors? Just have a question. It's not on notice, I think more for future reporting. If we could just have a breakdown of our cash reserves in terms of what's constrained, what's cash at bank.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we usually provide that on a monthly basis on our cash, on that financial report, but I can pull that table out and make it clearer.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there before us. Someone to move. Councillor Stewart, someone to second. Councillor Polly, Councillor Stewart to speak.
It's nice to know our cash reserves are increasing, though we do have a fair bit of capital works we need to spend money on. It's good to know we've got an income stream now because of the interest rates, as against a few years ago when they went down to 0. So I'm happy to move this report.
Councillor Polly.
No, it's good to see it's vanilla, but it's safe, so I'm happy to accept the report.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. The procurement report, IT and finance. Yes, that's nearly a hat trick. Hatherall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor and councillors, this is the procurement report. The report details a number of flying minutes which were within the delegation of the procurement panel to endorse. The report details those flying minutes and those particular procurement activities for your information. The second part of the report is in relation to a tender that we would like your approval or consideration of for the Southside Sewerage Project. There's been an extensive process followed in compliance with our procurement policy, and the legislation around procurement. The team have made a recommendation and they're asking for your consideration to place that particular contract so that we can start working on that stage of Southside sewerage.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Smith?
Just like to ask a question. We just had an extension, 6-month extension to the supply of on-site fuel. Will that be the final extension to that contract?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes indeed. We're working on the contract for bulk fuel now and it will be completed prior to the end of this extension.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Polly?
Is M&K a local company? Or is it just I see them around town so often, I think they're local?
They do have an office on the Sunshine Coast. They have done a considerable amount of work for council over probably the last 20 years, Councillor Fredman? Yeah, they've done a considerable amount of work for council over that time. I don't know whether they have an office here or not, I'm not sure. No, they don't.
Just outside of here.
Yeah. Councillor Smith?
It's regarding the disposal of the auto patcher. Is that being put up for tender, has it? Yes. Because I thought we had it on that a couple of months ago. It might have been gone by now, but anyway.
Through you, Mr Mayor, there's just a lot of red tape and paperwork we have to go through to actually get everything in to comply with the disposal. So, and we had Christmas during that period as well. So that's been completed and it has been put up for open tenders. And we've had a fair bit of interest at this point.
Councillor Stewart?
How does the cost of the, how does the tender price compare to what we were expecting within the budget?
We will only know that when
we get
it
to
comes back.
The tender's here, we've got the tender sums here.
Oh, sorry.
Southside sewage, so how does that compare to what we were expecting?
If I can get, Mr Mayor, if I can get Peter hang up.
Through the mayor, that stage 8 price is in line with the estimate that was put together for the stages 8 to 10. So this package is sort of around 30% of the whole 8 to 10. So once we get past this process, we'll be out tendering for 9 and 10 as well.
Councillor Polly?
Just a question, as I understand the bus stop shelter, that was fully externally funded? We're not actually tipping in our own money?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the bus stop, there is a bus stop shelter program and it will be fully funded by the state government. Yep.
Yes, it's fully funded by external money, not our money, yep, cool.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us that relates to the flying minutes and also the RFT for the Southside Sewage Stage 8. Someone to move? Councillor Polly, Councillor Smurd the second, Councillor Polly to speak.
Just most happy to see things moving along and keep it heading in the right direction, so happy to receive the report.
Are we voting on 1 and 2 or just 1?
Yes. What do you have to? We're voting on the resolution as it stands there at this point in time.
Yeah, happy to move. Getting the Southside sewerage going again is good to see. Yeah. Happy to second.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Polly to close.
Nothing further to add.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we might go back to the later agenda item, the quarterly questions taken on notice report. Hand over here, CEO.
Through Mr Mayor, I'm happy to take the report on notice. It was part of our commitment at the ordinary meeting on the 21st of September that we present a quarterly report back to council on all questions taken on notice. This report complies with the intent of that resolution, and happy to take any questions on notice.
Any questions on notice on the questions on notice?
Sorry, my mistake.
Any questions, councillors? I think there's a fair bit of detail in there, but if there's any points of clarification. No, if that's the case, we have a recommendation there before us. Councillor Debra to move, someone second, Councillor Smurd to second, Councillor Debra to speak.
I'd just like to thank council organisation for doing the questions on notice and for doing the report. I think it's fantastic. I think the public then can see answers to the questions that are not answered during the live stream meetings. So I'm very happy to be able to put this up for a vote.
Councillor Smith? Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Deborah to close. With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.1, Infrastructure Services Directorate Report, January 2023. I'd like to hand over to Mr McGann, who well, sadly will be forming your last meeting today.
Morning, Mr Mayor and councillors.
It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
For the last 2 years now?
About 2.5, nearly 2.5.
2.5 years. You'd like a good wine, you just but no, really appreciate the service, not only to the organisation but to the community, and the ideas and innovation you've brought to particularly around our facilities and the changes that you've made there, and the maintenance and handling, and also stepping up and filling a void when there was a need. So greatly appreciate working with you again.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your kind words. So introducing 8.1 today, the Infrastructure Services Quarterly Report, noting this is a historical report. Happy to take the report as read and take any questions that councillors may have.
Just before we head down that path, I'll just hand over to the CEO. We've got a new Director of Infrastructure. He's probably not wanting to be in the limelight, but
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd like to introduce Mr Graham O'Byrne to Council. Graham comes to us with extensive experience in both the private and public sector in all aspects of engineering, with particular focus on roads and drainage and infrastructure. We're seeing some of the innovations he will be able to force in council. We're already seeing some of our suggestions come through in the form of enhanced capital reporting, and we've got a presentation on gravel roads maintenance in our workshop later on this afternoon. So look forward to working with Graham over the next few months to improve our service delivery both to council and the community.
Welcome aboard, Graham. Great to have you. Oh, sorry, Mr McGann, I'll hand back over to you now.
Just happy to take the report as read, Mr Mayor, and would like to take any questions if there are any.
Councillor Stewart was first, and then Councillor Smith.
A constituent very opportunely asked me a question the other day about the Civic Centre.
Yes.
This report's coming up. Any idea, two questions really, any idea of when the Civic Centre renovations, if that's the right word, will be completed? And the other one is the piano in the Civic Centre, which is quite expensive, whether that is being looked after. Essentially, because it could be very expensive to repair, but it's not.
Yeah. So through you, Mr Mayor. So yes, the contractor Kane Constructions has commenced work some time ago regarding the restoration works with the asset renewal project for the Civic Centre. During the works, there's been quite a number of discoverable works, particularly around mould damage to certain elements of that building that have required the engagement of a hygienist in order to oversee those works, in order to facilitate the restoration works, and then once that's completed, to sign off to say that the building is safe for occupation. So that's it's a large building. The infestation of mould from the February flood is extensive, and the contractor is currently working through that at the moment in that sense with the hygienist. Additionally, only this week we've possibly experiencing some delays in getting a roofing contractor. The contractor has advised us that the subcontractor whom was to commence work this week has withdrawn his services. So consequently that has set back some of the concurrent work that we do with removing the asbestos out of the fly tower and the re-establishment of a watertight roof, flashings, drainage, water heads and so forth. So that will, currently the superintendent's working through those issues with the contractor about the impacts of that and whether there's other opportunities to bring other subcontractors in from potentially out of the council area, because it is fairly specialised. A lot of those box gutters and fittings and flashings are stainless steel, so consequently that's a little bit different to what current roof installations are. So that'll take a little bit of work for those, both the contractor and for council to work through what the resolution of that is. Regarding the piano, I can presume that the piano is safe and well looked after. I don't have any specific information on its condition or where it's currently located within that building.
Could we get on over to
Obviously.
so no time frame really?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there is a contractual timeframe, which I'm not able, I don't have that information, but probably it is subject to extension of time under the contract conditions. At this stage, there is a schedule that's planned for June. However, there may be some slippage due to whatever other elements are found around the mould infestation between the ceiling and the roof structure. That is unknown at this stage, and any delays that we may have in establishing a contractor to complete the removal and replacement of the roof elements.
Through Mr Mayor, there's a number of projects we want to discuss with council this afternoon around timelines for delivery, including the Civic Centre and a number of other community-based or community-intensive infrastructure assets.
Any other questions? Councillor Smead.
Mr McGowan, okay, the Mayor's comments, relationship has been rather interesting for whatever time it was. Don't think much of your horse advice, but other than that, you're not too bad. My question is, we have 198 capital delivery projects. We've completed 48 up to now, apparently.
Correct.
So what's the chances of finishing those 198?
Specifically, as the acting CEO has said, that the new director, Mr O'Byrne, is currently working with the manager of capital delivery to develop an individual report that highlights the expected completion time and scheduled completion time for each of those projects in this capital year. That's still a work in progress. Essentially, the bones of that template document are in place, and it'll be just a matter now for how Mr O'Byrne and the capital delivery manager work through that and want to report that back to council. Each of those projects are at various stages and will have various impacts on how they're delivered. That is, how far they're through their design development stage, the length of time it'll take them to procurement, what type of procurement activity will be required, whether it's quote, RFT, etc., and what the impacts will be getting that through, because there's a number of those procurement activities that need to go through our procurement business unit. So that again is a fairly large personal impact when that team has been pushed across into the ERP project in certain aspects. Some of those personnel are moved across. Contract formation takes a while, depending on whether the contractor pushes back on terms and conditions that need to be negotiated. Then getting the site mobilised into site, subcontractor availability, materials availability. So there's a lot of impacts on individual projects throughout that program. But however, that reporting mechanism, it'll highlight and give a better indication of whether projects are going to be delivered in this financial year or they'll be carried through as work projects through the next financial year.
Any other questions, Councillor Polly?
So, Mayor, just had a question on terminology in your REBA 01 table, where it says incomplete and $0 spent. So I'm assuming that means it's in the works, it just hasn't even started yet?
That's started, yes,
right.
That's correct.
Yep.
So currently we have, through you, Mr Mayor, we currently have teams at Glastonbury Creek Road. That's a fairly extensive piece of road restoration work. We have another, one of our other major roads is Animal Creek Road. That's been scheduled over the next 2 weeks. That will probably extend into a third week, Animal Creek Road being that this week's a short week, essentially. We also have another crew out at Boobigen Way. We have a number of scheduled works across our program for the next fortnight in roadside slashing. We hope to bring that back to program similarly to where the roadside slashing in drainage reserves around about April last year. So we hope to bring that back to cycle quite soon. So there should be some, now that we get some dry weather, we're able to recruit different personnel. That program should come back online fairly soon.
So, not that it matters so much, but Glastonbury Creek Road, I know you've been out there, unless I've got the wrong road, because I run a bus out there. So you've spent a bucket load of money, but it's got zero here. Is that because it's...
So this is a historical report. It doesn't necessarily mean it's an expenditure report. So we've only just commenced works out there. So this report obviously was...
It's a bit old, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't got an expenditure against at this point in time.
Right.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, just referring to the voluntary home buybacks program, so just to be clear, it's a state agency that decides what homes are bought back, but then we decide what to do with the land, is that right? And so I understand it's coming back to a workshop at some stage? Yes. Okay. And I have another question. So with bypass, and there is some sort of demarcation between what our responsibility is and what bypass management responsibility is in regards to the local road network. And yet I've had constituents who phone up and say, I've contacted council, they say it's the bypass management responsibility, and then the bypass people say, no, it's council responsibility. How are we going with negotiating that sort of issue with the bypass management?
So through you, Mr Mayor, we currently have a monthly meeting that the Director and the Manager of Capital Delivery have with TMR. There are a number of issues that we discuss at that meeting, and particularly about ongoing future maintenance of the bypass and whether council may elect to participate in that activity as well. So as far as delineating the accountability for maintenance of that road, that will be for discussion.
I'm not talking about the bypass road, I am talking about the local roads within the bypass footprint.
Yep.
And there seems to be currently argy-bargy about who's responsible for repairing certain local roads.
I think Flood Road is probably an
And Flood Road is the primary example.
yeah.
I've tripped in a pothole this morning, but anyway.
At this point in time, I don't know any specifics around what Councillor Stewart's talking through, but however, we work closely with TMR and that project team to understand any of the local impacts while that bypass is under construction, which I think is the important piece, that we actually work with the contractor to understand who has responsibility. The Manager of Capital Delivery is, he liaises with the project director, particularly where they need to use local roads as part of the work that's under construction. So we have regular contact with them around any potential issues on local roads that have been impacted by the work under construction for the bypass. So those matters are probably best to refer to us so that we can get them resolved.
I have in terms of Flood Road.
Yeah.
Flood Road, I think, is a constant conversation, and there may be a desire, I'm not sure, to not do anything until bypass is finished because of the amount of heavy vehicle activity that's on that road and the effort required to do it up while that's going on. But it is
Still need to have
issues there to deal with.
Still need a pothole filled in, and that's a particular issue. I mean, that's raised.
We can take that on notice, Mr Mayor. I know of other roads that we are regularly in contact with the project director from BBJV regarding the impacts and the damage to those roads, and they have undertaken works where they have been the major contributor to the road damage. So that's an ongoing process that we are continually looking at and monitoring. The particular issues that Councillor Stewart has, I'm not aware of that pothole particularly, or whatever that damage is, but I'm certainly...
Flood Road was never a wide road, it was bitumen, but it wasn't really two lanes, but the heavy vehicle traffic, the truck and dogs and the like that have been there have certainly chipped away at what a strip of bitumen was there and created other issues. It's not, there's not enough local traffic to justify the damage that has sort of come about.
Yeah, and our locals use different roads.
Yeah. But certainly we can give you the undertaking to contact, and we are in contact with BBJV around any concerns we have about the work under construction for the bypass that's impacting local roads.
Is there continued discussion around the bridge this side of Carter Holt. As you go up a hill towards.
Hall Road over the railway.
Yes.
Yes, so that is one of the items that is discussed regularly at that monthly meeting. If you require further information about that, Mr Mayor and Councillors, we can bring that back to you as well, providing that TMR are willing to release that information, because there are other stakeholders involved in those conversations regarding that bridge.
Oh, no, I think I think it is a priority for the community to have that resolved, and I understand that QR and TMR are, ducking and weaving and see who misses out on a chair when the music stops. But it would be beneficial to have that resolved as a matter of priority, particularly given the design of some of the off ramps and where they look to send heavy vehicles, and without rectifying the issues with that bridge, part of the work that they're doing is a little bit impotent. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Deborah?
Has everyone else completed? Okay.
I think something else, don't worry.
First of all, through the Mayor, I'd just like to say thank you. I'm so disappointed to hear you're leaving, because I do think you do a fantastic job, and I've got full faith in what you do. So, big shoes to step into. But yeah, just from me personally, thank you very much for what you've done. I've got some questions, if I could, through the Mayor. Firstly, looking at the 198 projects that we've got listed here, and then going further over and seeing we've got a total number of works complete, 1,137 in the last, I think that's from January through to 30th of October by the looks of it. It's just a couple of pages in. I mean, that is a lot of work that the organisation is cracking on through, and yet the prevailing thoughts in the community are council's doing bugger all. I just think it would be great if we could consider a list of some sort, and to actually show the community what we see, which is that we're aware of all these particular things, so that people can see where it is on the list of when it's going to probably get to. And I know things will shuffle around and nothing's set in concrete, but I think communicating with the public about what we've got on would certainly go a long way to repairing the reputation of the organisation in terms of, no, we are doing work. And there is so much work after those flood events. I think most people understand that, but they don't understand why their particular bit isn't being done right now. Is it something that's been looked at?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, we currently work with corporate comms, and part of the rescheduling our capital reporting, we're going to have a dedicated web page under council's banner to publish when we will be in certain areas where we're active in the project.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. That's that bit. Good answer. Right. Second of all, I see that we've got a lot of, this is as of the 11th of January, a lot of vacancies in the roads area and drainage. According to this, 30 of 111 positions at that point. I haven't seen that many advertised on Seek, and what's the other?
So, through you, Mr Mayor, we have a number of different platforms and strategies in order to attract personnel to roles. That's an ongoing conversation that through the director and the managers have in order to facilitate that, so we can get personnel properly engaged so that we can actually undertake our work. So that's been happening for the last 3 or 4 months. There's been various levels of success around recruiting, and it's still an ongoing issue for us, particularly around being able to get the right people to undertake the works that we require.
Thank you. My third question has to do with page 37, the voluntary home buyback program. It's got here, the project team will lead on the deconstruction of infrastructure on each site. Can I just ask who pays for the pulling down of these buildings?
through Mr Mayor, that's if you are.
They pay for that? Fabulous. Yeah, that's a good answer, good answer. Okay, my fourth question, and it's the same page, I'm just going down to the flood recovery works, and we've got like the Gympie Horse and Rodeo and Jack Stokes Oval, the Tansy Complex, 1 Mile Complex, Albert Park. Are we building back for resilience? Through the man.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, that's correct. So where we're able to, in any of our restoration efforts, we would be using materials that have a higher resilience and a different method in order to resist those sorts of flood events. So, for instance, in a public amenity, you might use a Colorbond external cladding that sits a couple of inches above the floor, for instance, providing a whole lot of other stuff. But using those sort of materials that can wash down more easily and not have cavities where you'd hold water, those sorts of strategies. But they're all individually tailored for each building, obviously, because they've still got to comply with the Building Code of Australia for a whole lot of technical provisions that are required. So yes, where we're able to use a different type of material or an element in order to have a greater level of resistance against flooding impacts or water inundation impacts, that's correct. That's what we do. And that's been part of a strategy for quite some time. But it's just sort of more come to the fore through state agencies just recently around the multitude of events that have impacted buildings, low-level buildings, right across the southeast Queensland or council areas, but even in private homes and Class 10 building sheds and that sort of.
Now, I imagine that increases the cost. Would that be?
No, not necessarily. No.
Wonderful.
In fact, it can be the reverse. Particularly if you're looking at your Class 10 buildings where you might have had some materials that probably not as resistant to water, but they don't not necessarily have buildings. You can build them a little bit differently, but still be cost efficient and more effective in dealing with flood.
Can I ask about Class 10 buildings?
Say your sheds, your outbuildings, those sorts of buildings.
Sorry?
They don't have the same sort of technical requirements that a dwelling does or a commercial building does.
Okay.
So,
thank you for that. Again, I hope that when we do stuff like that, we put it out there and let people know that this is something that is built for resilience, and hopefully we won't have similar problems, or not to the extent maybe. Finally, you'll be pleased to know, other property matters, it's the same page, but between those last two. I have been approached by a group that's looking to redo a lease, and they came up against a fee for the legals, that they have to pay for the legal costs of doing the lease for the. When we look at these 24 leases in relation to upcoming tenures and all the rest, is everyone on the same page there? Are they all having to pay that now?
correct. So through you, Mr Mayor, what I believe they may be looking at is the stamp duty fees. So in that case, they'd be consistently applied regardless. However, I don't know your specific example what that fee may be, but I'm presuming that that's what it would be.
They said solicitors' fees or something.
Well, they would be responsible for their own costs for the review of that lease document if that's what they chose to do.
No, but they said that was council telling them that they had the $1,500 fee.
Normally when we renew a lease, we have our standard pro forma lease, although so there's no legal fees associated with it, so it's a bit of something new that this group, are you able to forward some specific details again, and we can get some information?
Certainly. I mean, my concern is when we're looking at something that's $120-odd peppercorn lease over, say, 3 or 5 years, suddenly having a $1,500 bill on top of that really blows it out of the water, and normally these groups are non-for-profit and they don't bring a lot of money in necessarily for what they give out, so that is a concern. I will pass that on.
Through Mr Mayor, do I suggest we take that question on notice?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it.
Any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Councillor Freedman?
Just a quick question. This unemployment rate on the infrastructure services side of council, you describe it as drastic. I think you're being generous. It's worse than that. particularly given the number of plant operator positions we've got, and more importantly, the number of diesel mechanics we're short. You know, you can't have a fleet unless you've got diesel fitters. They're so important. Would I be correct in thinking that our own capacity in infrastructure services has been reduced by a third?
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Freeman, could you just clarify, reduced by a third from when?
From Prime, in other words, no vacancies.
So it's been since my tenure. It's been an issue. We've had a number of vacancies in the workshop area for quite some time, and we continually find a suitable applicant, and we no sooner find a suitable applicant, and another officer chooses to take on another role somewhere else. So it's not necessarily a lot of people moving out at the same time. It's more that it's a continual movement of people around all our different disciplines within infrastructure services. So at one stage we did have quite a number of our workshop diesel fitters personnel move within a very short period of time. So that was an immediate impact in how we could then service our vehicles, but also about the timing of recruiting them. We're not necessarily just recruiting one diesel fitter, one plant operator, etc. They were all in the one area at the one time. So sometimes, yes, we do get some significant movement just in one area, but generally it's right across the board. As that table indicates, it's fairly widespread in the sense of the recruitment activity that we've got to undertake.
Yeah, questions, Councillor Freeman? All right.
Just trying to absorb the answer. All I was basically asking, is this a critical situation in terms of our own outputs?
Yes.
The way I read it, with some key positions not being filled, it'll be great. We won't know the organisation will be that good when we're back to 100%, because you can't operate without plant operators, diesel fitters, and these figures are horrendous. Not our fault, because I happen to know much the same situation in other councils as well at the moment. The joy of having a massive project like the highway on our doorstep is great for the community, but as we talked about a couple of years ago, there's going to be a downside, and that's to run our own show. It's making it harder and harder to run our own show, because we need the same sort of people, and we probably can't pay as much as contractors do. So all in all, your answer basically says to me, yeah, we're in deep and we're struggling, but there's no option but to keep on trying.
Through you, Mr Mayor, also to take on Councillor Fredman's point, also the impacts are made more problematic in when we get people who are suffering from COVID, sick days, etc. So even though we have a 2-week look-ahead program in our roads and drainage team, simply having one of the operators out of one of those crews called in sick, then we need to split up those teams on a daily basis in order to keep momentum around some of the projects that we're starting. So the supervisors, coordinators and managers are working daily in order to make adjustments to those crews, and we can have anything up to 22 crews if we were fully complemented, where we're not fully complemented. So the material impact just in the roads and drainage team is, it's a very full operation on a daily basis in order to maintain some momentum around how we do our roads and drainage, but also our capital program in order to do design, development, project managers. They're difficult to find good project managers that would not impact on the line supervisor actually putting in a lot of work in order to make sure that they're at their full capacity in order to be able to deliver the work we require. So it's right, as Councillor Freeman said, it's right across the board. We're not the only council affected, we're not the only organisation affected by the lack of available resources in different disciplines.
Councillor Jensen.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Is there something we can do about getting more apprentices and training up the young people of Gympie if we can't get the labour here and nowhere for them to live? It just makes sense that we would get the young ones out of high school that can stay home with their parents. We may lose them later to bigger paying mining companies and that, but we will still have people on the ground doing doing work and being trained.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that's right. We do have programs about how we engage trainees and apprentices, but at the same time we do have an engagement process for apprentices and trainees. They need to be with someone who needs to train them on site. So you take away some of that capacity as well. Not to say that we don't do it, and we do it. So yes, that's right. But also part of our process is to upskill some of our staff. So we have training programs where officers are approved to get additional certification for whatever that may be that we require. But also that makes them more attractive for another employer to pay at a higher rate. So it's a bit of, yes, we can, where we identify we have a need, and we council pay for the training requirement. There's potential then that yes, they will stay for 3 or 4, 5, 6 months. They may stay for 10 years, but they may also, and they have done, move on.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's the recruitment of additional apprentices would be something the council may wish to consider as part of the 23-24 budget.
I know work has been done in not so much in the high vis area, but in other areas to work with USC to fill some of the roles and the vacancies that we can partner with them and bring younger people on. It's a challenge with so much civil construction, and our roles, in IS is a lot of civil construction. You've got a bypass and a lot of other developments and roadworks and that in and around this area. It is a challenging time to get staff. Any other questions, councillors? Right. Have a recommendation there before us. Councillor Smurden to move. Someone to second. Councillor Mill. Councillor Smurden to speak.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to again welcome Mr. O'Byrne to the new position, or to the position of Director. I hope you hit the ground running, Graham. It's going to be a mountain of work in front of you. So, and infrastructure is going to be a very important part of our role in the next 2 years, 3 months, 3 years. So we've got a mountain of work to do, and we've just got to try and get it done as soon as we can. So it's good to get a comprehensive report like this as well from that department. So yeah, it's good. Happy to move.
Councillor Mill.
Just echoing Councillor Smurden, I believe that our organisation has incredibly talented, dedicated staff, and we have had the pleasure of having Mr. McGann here, and I look forward to seeing what you bring to the table, Mr. O'Byrne. So I'm excited about that. So, if it's following suit, I'm sure you're going to be absolutely awesome. So I love a good report. This is actually a really extensive report, and it really details some stuff we don't ordinarily get. I believe there may have been a challenge set once before on the infrastructure services report and giving information, and this has delivered. The highlight is the actual struggles that we are having with our roads and drainage, and that is a community concern. It's something that's raised quite often by my constituents about the processes around those repairs and the delays, and even just the patch repairs while we wait for a proper repair to be done, and just understanding those processes. This report does really outline that, and also gives me, so I can actually give some messaging back out for that. I was, for my Division 1, really concerned about the threat to our water supply that we had through an event that was unknown, and I really appreciate having staff that are familiar with these risks that we do have, and then to be on site, and also that we've got reinvestment in our works to be able to put in mitigation so we can actually repair this and also have a safeguard for later on as well. So that was just two of my things. I could probably speak more to the report, but look, it was really comprehensive, and I've always said this document itself would be a lovely thing to be sitting on the website as an information thing, and so yeah, if we could move to that, would be great. So yeah, happy to have it received and noted.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Smurden to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to ask the community as a whole that we have a mountain of work to do, and can they give us some consideration? We're trying to work through it as fast as we can, and Rome wasn't built in a day, so happy to make.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. That concludes our general meeting for this morning. We'll break for some morning tea. Thank you for your attendance.
That's isn't it? And ones that their roads. The ones they built 2,000 years ago.